Wir freuen uns sehr, euch im Namen von Digital Shift und Debt Talks hier im Schlotterbeck begrüßen zu dürfen. We are now going to switch to English. Warm welcome also to our international guests, visitors, listeners and speakers. My name is Michael Volkart. I am founder and partner of former Hinderling Volkart and now Debt Agency. Debt is a global digital agency, has its roots in the Netherlands and in Switzerland. We have a broad background in digital platforms and experiences and also in digital marketing. And we are trying to create value by combining those two disciplines. Yes, and this is my friend Alain.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Alain. We're doing the Digital Shift talks quite some time now, nearly 10 years. And we are together. Partners in crime. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I'm a designer, June is a digital marketer, and we work on Digital Shift and on visual context. Yeah, and we help digitize companies and do a lot of digital product development. Yeah. And so this Digital Shift talks now in future will always be here at Debt. Yes, we really like it here, and we really thought it's really useful to make a collaboration. So we will have it every time here. So if you want to come, we have now a really nice setup. It's perfect. Yeah, and we will have these topics here. So here some people want to thank. Many people helped here also in Debt to organize it so nicely. Also many people we interviewed and helped us to research this topic. So these are huge people who made this possible, not just me. Okay, yeah, and the purpose on business, this topic, with all this time of Corona, we noticed that certain things all of a sudden stopped. Things we used to do all the time, we didn't do anymore. And then we might think, well, did we even need to do those things? Were those things even purposeful? And many people started to think about that. Is that thing I'm doing really purposeful? And if you look to a younger generation, many of them are quitting because their work environment is not as purposeful enough. So we thought there might really be something to this topic, and that's why we start researching it, and that's why we're here.
Yes, and there's, I think, also a connection to the geopolitical and environmental challenges that we are facing nowadays. It's in those times increasingly important also to ask yourself, what am I doing? Is this purposeful? Is this having a good impact? Why am I doing things? I think also, especially for companies that have an increasing impact also on political and societal topics, it's more and more important to ask yourself, what is my impact? Why am I here? Or how would the world be worse if I would not doing what I do? And to this evening, we would like to explore a bit on how much is this topic purpose really capable of transforming our economy to something better, or even transform our society, or if it's just another trend or something, a framework that makes companies even more profitable or more efficient. And we have two great speakers tonight here that will deep dive with us in these topics. But before we introduce the speakers, we would like to do a little warm-up together, play a little game. We have, nowadays a lot of companies communicate their official purpose, and we would like to look at some purposes of some companies and would like you to guess which company stands behind those purposes. So just shout if you have any idea which company could have this purpose. Red Bull? Very good. So it's an easy one to begin with. Next one, in business to save our home planet. No. It's an apparel company. Yes. And then to build communities and bring the world closer together. Yes. To accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. Tesla. and to build a better tomorrow. Philip Morris. Yes, I wouldn't have thought that either. So, yeah, let's introduce the two speakers. First speech will be of Melissa Buch. She's very passionate about the topic. She's dedicating her energy, her business, maybe even her life to the topic of purpose, and has communication agency called Brandbuch, which is helping clients to, I'd say, sharpen or define or develop or implement their purposes. And then there's Gerhard Andrey. He is a Swiss entrepreneur and a politician, and with his maxims on the good impact that companies should have, and with his way he leads his digital agency Liip, he's kind of a role model, not just for the agency scene here in Switzerland, but also for the Swiss economy, I'd say. And he's a member of the Swiss National Council also, and a member of the board of the Alternative Bank.
Yes, we have the short talks. Then we have a discussion in the plenum, so we won't have questions in between, but at the end. And after the discussion, we'll have an apéro, so everybody can talk to everybody. Yeah, and then if you like this event, here is how you can get to the next one. There are 2 newsletters which you can subscribe to, and you can also talk to other people if you liked it. Okay.
Yes, and short notice about the next event. This will be in June at Schlotterbeck, and it will be a Web 3.0 art event.
Yeah? Hello, everyone. So I'm going to start telling you a bit about my story. So this is my story in a snapshot. So here up left is my dad. He's from Argentina. And then here below is my mom. She's from Morocco. So this is where it starts. But I was born in France and grew up in Barcelona. So you can try to see some of the pictures. And then I did part of my MBA in Boston. He's out there also. And then lived in Israel for 7 years. He's out there. And here I am in Zurich. So that's a little bit about where I'm from, and my accent, I think, is mostly Spanish. We can agree to that. So basically, I started as a partner in a big agency from Barcelona, expanding the business to international markets. I opened an office in Tel Aviv, and then Guatemala and Miami. And then, after a while, I was working for big clients. I had an existential crisis. I was more or less 7 or 8 years ago. And I was like, what are we doing here? We're just designing packagings and doing things for clients that are like not really meaningful. And actually talent and consumers, they don't care anymore. So I started getting very interested by the topic of purpose. And this is where I started also to talk about it, as you can see here in these pictures. It's a few years ago already. And this is where I decided to basically leave the company I was at and found Brandbuch. So as they said already, like purpose is a big part of my life and my passion, and how to connect purpose to talent, to business, to brands, and this is what I do. I have 2 kids. Here you can see Liam, my older son, and this picture, which you're maybe wondering what is this picture doing there, is from the last movie of my brother that I love, and he's a movie director and lives in France. So I think now you know everything about me. So let's dig a bit into the topic. So I'm here to talk about purpose in business, and I'm going to start with a small game. So I'm going to show you 2 actions from big companies that you know. So CVS, you probably all know it. It's a very big parapharmacy in the US. Decided long time ago to stop selling tobacco. So of course, it seems like a normal move, right? A parapharmacy selling tobacco is like crazy, but they were actually the #1 tobacco seller in the US. So suddenly, one day to another, they launched a campaign, CVS Quit for Good Tobacco, Health is Everything. Well, it represented a big part of their profit for a very long time. So what do you think happened back then? What was the reaction from the public? Anyone? I just told you about my whole story of my life, so I think we're friends. We can say that, okay? So can someone like...
I think it actually helped business.
You think it helped them? So, yeah, go ahead, sorry. Yeah, so this is actually what happened. So it was the best decision they took in years for their business, okay? No, of course, they lost a lot of money, but then they realized the public was getting so crazy about it that they made this thing their whole purpose. And they decided to go on a battle to help people quit tobacco. Like suddenly they realized that this was something, and this was in 2014 that they did. And these are the results. I'm not going to go through it, but basically overwhelming. No? What it brought to the brand, what it brought to the business, they didn't expect it. And this is the second example that, I mean, of course, everyone knows it, but there is even a very big campaign from Patagonia, which was called "The President Stole Your Land" to Trump, okay? Which basically was, your president is basically in 2017, he was starting to put at risk what was considered a protected land, no? And Patagonia is a company that is known for these campaigns, but after this one, which was "The President Stole Your Land," which is very, very politically, let's say, not correct for a company, actually what happened is that the day after, their online sales were 6 times higher than the week before on a similar day. So this was a direct reaction to their campaign. So why? So the question is why some actions actually help companies like these ones and others don't. And this is the reason why actually I do purpose and I founded Brandbuch, because I got very interested by this topic. So this is the truth that is happening today. Consumers and talent, and you would agree, they don't want to be sold to anymore. They don't want to feel like you're trying to oversell me something. There is a lack of trust. I don't believe anymore in companies that are trying to tell something and do something else. I want to resonate with companies. And today, 40% of consumers are already purpose-driven in their consumption habits. This is crazy, and we will see examples after. And not only that, but now we have different expectations from the company too. I expect companies to improve my quality of life and get involved in social and political issues. And before, this was not expected, no? Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, and we see that in 2025, millennials will make, I don't know if we should run or what's this animal? Okay, so in 2025, 75% of the workforce will be millennials. You see what I mean? No? I mean, in terms of talent, the impact is huge. So this is actually the last Edelman report. I don't know if you know this report, but I strongly recommend to look at it. They do once a year a report about the trust barometer. And this year, I recommend you to go check. It's like the results are overwhelming. They are like totally different and showing a social shift and business shift that we haven't seen before. No? And here we see that people expect businesses to do the job that was done by governments before. They expect CEOs to do things that were done by politicians before, no? They say 68% of the people think that CEOs should step in when the government doesn't fix things, no? So there is a lack of trust in society at large, but the lack of trust in the government is even higher than in the companies, no? So if I have a company that I trust, that I build trust, I expect this company to help me make more money, to help me with my social insurance, to help me when I have problems with my children. I expect everything from them, no? And this is a very big shift in how we understand businesses. So this is where we come from, and we say today, sustainable growth, which is growth in the long term, is only reserved for companies that are ready to stand. There is no place for the others. I mean, maybe a little bit of growth, and then again, we need to invest in advertising, and again, and again, and again, that is not sustainable. So the only solution, the only way to grow a business in the long term is to stand for something that goes beyond your product or service. So here is an example, very recent. I chose a couple that are from very, very recent now, the last weeks, just to show you things that maybe you didn't see. So this is Hellmann's, the #1 mayonnaise brand from Unilever. And I'm facing an existential crisis, and I'm trying to work out my purpose. This came out from I don't know if someone heard about this. No, okay. So Unilever is one of the companies that has been defending and building brands with purpose for the longest time. Okay, so they've been really big defendants with Dove, that you probably all know, okay, and other Beauty and the Planet, other brands that they launched, where they were very strong defendants of purpose. But now recently, the CEO came out and said that all their brands, even the brands that were there forever, like Hellmann's, will be built on a purpose. And the mayonnaise will have a purpose. So how do you feel about it? Yeah, this is exactly what happened, okay? So basically what happened is that an investor, very important investor that's called Terry Smith, he was laughing at them and saying, what do you mean? Like a mayonnaise from 1913 has a purpose beyond being a mayonnaise? Like what, are we crazy? Like what's this company doing? Like, and he basically launched a campaign almost against the management from Unilever saying, this is ridiculous, this is a lack of respect to your shareholders, you should be focusing on selling more mayonnaise. This is your job, what are you doing? And Unilever didn't answer for a while, and everyone got nervous. Do they think they were wrong? Did they do the right choice? They were totally right, but they took a while to build a response, and they actually responded with facts, okay? So there is no question it's right, Unilever marketing chief silences purpose critics, okay? So let me explain you a bit what was the purpose that Hellmann's launched, and it was a very smart one and very connected to their purpose, so to their product, sorry. So let's make taste, not waste. So what was their purpose? They decided to go on a battle against food waste. Why? You open your fridge, it's Friday, you don't have anything to eat, an apple and a cucumber, you don't know what to do with it, and Hellmann's help you. So they started to bring ideas to people of how to use the food you have in your house by mixing it with mayonnaise to avoid food waste, okay? Which is very smart. They came up with recipes, with a helpline to help you cook with what you have, and they went on a battle against waste that now goes beyond the mayonnaise. They are involved in many, many initiatives against food waste, okay? So what happened is that he says, listen, looking at the results is overwhelming, and let's look at it a bit at the number, no? So they said, basically, our 28 sustainable living brand, those taking action to support positive change for the planet and people, grew 69% faster than the rest of our business. 69% faster, and Unilever has a lot of brands. That's up from 46% in 2017. And they also deliver 65% of the overall growth. Okay? So basically, he keeps on going and going and going with numbers, the CEO and the marketing director saying, you're wrong. Looking at the numbers, our two stronger brands are Hellmann's and Dove from far, and they are growing much faster, no? So this is an example of how brands that have a purpose, even if we think it's ridiculous because you all laughed at the mayonnaise, when the purpose is connected somehow to the product, is genuine, it's authentic, and you go beyond, it works. People want to stop having food waste. So another example, which is very different, talks to talent, is, I'm guessing there are engineers in the room. Is working for General Electric's cool? Like working for Google or probably not. Imagine for Generation Z, for millennials, for General Electric were fighting against very, very complicated challenge to attract talent because General Electric is not cool. It's not cool, it's not meaningful, it's not up to date. So they launched a campaign, which they call Impact the World, Work on Things That Matter, where they started creating stories of how the small things that the people at General Electric were doing were actually helping change and save the world, no? And here you see an example that says, keep calm and carry on. This software code can protect subsea rigs from hurricane. And this is in their website. So basically, they are taking a very different tone in terms of career. This drove their whole way of attracting people, where they say, this small thing that you're doing is actually helping protect millions of people around the world. This small thing that you're doing at General Electric can change lives. And this is the way, and they humanize it. So they also started sharing, like, What's the Matter with Owen, which is the story of a young person that didn't find their purpose and how in General Electric, so they started to humanize also their purpose to attract young generations. So that's what we call, at Brandbuch, the perpetual circle of purpose. So you define a purpose that is authentic. We will go there now. This purpose, if it's well done, increases your profits. You take part of your profit, you invest it in purpose again, purpose-driven action, which makes your purpose even stronger, which brings you more profit, and just keep going, okay? And this is a bit what we do and what we believe in. Some companies, they focus first on this part of the circle. Let's do profit, then we invest a bit in purpose-driven actions, and then we will figure out what's our purpose, okay? Most of them, okay? And what we're saying is this won't work because the purpose will not be authentic and then it won't be profit. You cannot cheat the system, okay? So how do you make a good purpose? And this is what we call the purpose pillars. So number one, the purpose is authentic and credible. Looks like easy, but it's not. How do you do that? You don't try to do something that people want from you. You try to do something that you can stand behind. And some companies are like, yeah, but I don't know, we don't have that. You do have. If you dig enough and you look inside the organization, there is always something that you can stand behind. So that's when we say we don't do slogans, we do purpose. You don't create a purpose because it sounds nice. You don't create a purpose because it's relevant to your consumers, because at the end of the day, the purpose is not your tagline. It's an engine in the organization. And then you can do a tagline with it, you can do whatever you want in terms of communications, but it's not something meant to be nice. It's something to help you grow. The second is relevant to all stakeholders. So that's very important. Again, it's not only relevant to some of the organization, it's relevant to talent, it's relevant to governments, it's relevant to suppliers, it's relevant to consumers, it's relevant to clients, it's relevant to NGOs, it's relevant to everyone that enters in contact with your organization. The third one, it does not talk about your product or service. This is the golden rule, and probably the hardest for clients. So we usually do a game which is called the invisible product game, where we tell clients, okay, you go into a room, you have a minute to pitch your company, and you cannot talk at all about what you do and how you do it. You can't. You just have a minute to talk about your company without saying what's your product. It's incredibly hard for them. They're like, it's really, really hard. So I invite you all to do that process, because when you find a way to talk about what you do without saying what you do, you're going to end up probably talking about your purpose, no? Then a good purpose inspires the organization. That's very important. It needs to move. It needs to inspire talent. It needs to inspire consumers. It needs to make them want to stand up and take a standing ovation. It's inspiring, okay? And the last one, it never changes. So you can do a lot of things around it. You can do communication, advertising, taglines, campaigns, but it doesn't change. The reason why you exist cannot change. It's like the day you were born. It doesn't change, right? So our purpose doesn't change. It's there, and everything around adapts. So then what's my purpose? Why do I wake up in the morning? So that's my answer. To think and do purpose that creates real impact. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm actually quite happy that I made it here. You see my tennis ball in my mouth. My dentist had a great afternoon yesterday. I actually wasn't sure if I could make it, but I'm here, and so I try to do my best. So I'm going to drastically decrease the flight level here, because I'm going to talk about the purpose and the practices around it. Of a small or medium-sized company in Swiss doing services like Das Debt and others, I guess, are here. We're a digital agency. We are around 200 employees scattered all over Switzerland, or let's say the IC1 linie of the SBB and a bit further. We didn't really manage to do the south east, but that's not a big issue. So these about 200 employees are in these 6 locations, and we try to accomplish one thing, one purpose. So what is this purpose? And I think I'm going to disappoint you. You've seen maybe our claim, it's digital progress, but our purpose is a pretty tough sentence. I'll let you read it. it evolved. The basic meaning, the basic purpose didn't change that much. But this sentence is the one we're working with for quite a while now. But what is it? It's three things that are really important. It's about social, environmental, and economic value by striving for digital human progress. Of course, that's very important. That's what we do, but what we want to create as value. And this definition isn't that much of an accident. If you look up the definition of sustainable development, you're going to find that sustainability knows nowadays three pillars. It's the environment, it's the economy, and it's the social pillar. And these three things, you have somehow to deal with them if you want to contribute to a sustainable development. So what we did so far, Liip now is 15 years old, so was quite a ride. What we did in the past, or I'd say what we focused strongly on, is how we work. So what did we do as a company when we went to work, how we went to work, how we do our daily work. So if I look at the environment, so there's simple things, you all might know these as well. So it's about promotion of cycling, it's about subsidizing public transport. We don't have any parking lots. If we have them, we massacre them like we did in Zurich. There's a great table, but there are no parking lots at Liip. There are no company cars, and there's a no-fly policy. Liip doesn't cover flight costs. But Liip will always pay the train ticket and even the hours that you might spend a bit more in public transport than in a plane. We always consumed or used green electricity. Then have some other things like video conferencing. Back then, that was quite special, I'd say. Now, after the pandemic, that became somehow standard. But that had a big impact in order to be able to make conferences without having to leave the own town. And for all we couldn't avoid emitting, we compensated since day one. If I look at the social things we do, so there's this paternity leave. I mean, 15 years ago, actually Hannes, another co-founder of the company, sits right here. You remember like 15, 20 years ago when we started this endeavor, because before Liip there was a smaller company we founded in Fribourg. And when we started to talk about leaves for daddies with their newborns, 4 weeks, 100% paid, we were like crazy back then. Others didn't really took that seriously because it wasn't standard at all. Nowadays, of course, it's different. It became mainstream. But back then, that was quite special. Part-time work, another thing. I don't think that's special for you, but that's a thing I still think is really important, especially for like gender equality. At Liip, more than half of the employees work part-time, and we don't see any difference anymore between men and women. Swiss average is 18% of men work part-time and about 60 to 70% of women work part-time. So it's completely different. We could somehow deal with that at Liip. There are other things like unpaid leaves, you know that. Many of your companies, I guess, also do self-organization. We do that like since 6 years now, and in a, I'd say, very consequent way with Holacracy. We share power and profit. So if we have profit, we share among all Liipers. So there's no individual bonus. We are all in the same boat, these kinds of things. And we give access to Liip shares, so everyone can have a part of Liip. Liip shares cannot leave the company. Only people within Liip can hold shares. And we do a lot of community building, like you do this evening. Actually, that's great. It's important. We as well try to host in our 6 offices from time to time interesting evenings. Economically, I mean, solid profit since day one. We have loyal clients. I mean, these parts of things are not that special, especially in our market. We have, I'd say, some impactful projects. Not all of them are very impactful, but there's a thing that may be different to other companies. We refuse potentially harmful projects, and our threshold is rather high. We don't want to create harm, and even in times where we needed benefit, where we needed turnover, we refused projects. The list is quite long when you would look at it. So we always try to choose things we thought would make the world somehow a better place. Then we do other things like promoting open source, open data, etc. And yet another thing, our pension funds are managed in a sustainable way, so it's impactful also in terms of finances. So, everything fine, isn't it? Almost. We know pretty well how we work, so we know our footprint, how to go to work, what's the impact of it, how we deal with our colleagues, our peers, what we do. We have a strong focus on that, I'd say, from the beginning. And there's something missing, or it went clear that we should add another thing. You see here our principles, and there's the first of them is quite important and heavy. Purpose over profit. So first of all, what does that mean? So you have to refuse things that aren't okay with your purpose, and you might not win that much. You have to accept that. But then again, what does this purpose actually means? I mean, I told you we refuse clients, we refuse projects if it does not fit with what we think would make the world a better place. But it became harder and harder to actually deal in a good way with that, or even to put it differently. How can we measure positive impact? Do no harm is a great thing. It's already challenging to not do harm, but to have a good impact, how do you deal with that? So we don't really know, or we didn't really know our impact of what we do. And what do? We have hundreds of projects in parallel for dozens of companies in dozens of sectors. So we're it's not a mayonnaise. It's different. We do many things for many companies, and it's a B2B market. And there we found out that it's rather hard to find something that really helps us to find out what's the positive impact of the stuff we're doing. So how to measure impact in this setting? It's not a mayonnaise, it's not a jacket, it's a bit more, I'd say, it's less tangible. If we do an API project, a web project, a mobile application project for some company who does whatever, how do we measure what our contribution is? Enter the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I guess you all know this image, or at least one of them. These are the Sustainable Development Goals the UN defined, or all countries together defined in 2015 as the Agenda 2030. And here you have these 17 objectives. Things like no poverty, zero hunger. I won't read them out loud each and every one, but you see the idea. It's basically a definition of what is a sustainable world looking like, and what are the things we should do. So we have these main objectives, and you have sub-objectives, so we have many things that are within this thing. So we started the work to make an inventory of our product portfolio. Product meaning N projects for one client equals one product. So we have this entity product, and we have the entity client. And we just started to think, so what's the impact of the client to society? What's the commitment of the client? Let's say, are they compliant with the Paris Agreement? Are they on a path that is tangible, that is credible, that is audited, that is real? And what about the project we're working on? What does that thing do we actually work on? So we tried, and there was quite a big work, especially the first inventory. We tried to do that for each and every product and client over these 17 objectives. So it's I'd say almost big data thingy. If you do it by hand, then it's big. So we started to make this inventory. I'm going to show you a few. I'm sorry, I had to obfuscate a few things, but that's a screenshot from our ERP, our Enterprise Resource Planning System we developed since day one. And it has this kind of feature now. So we know now what the sustainability score of this product is. It is through the company score, defined through the company score and the product score, and it is weighed and it gives you this number. And what we do in detail, if you look at the detail, that's the company score. You see 2 of the SDGs. I guess this client has about 5 to 8 objectives we were looking at. We said how relevant is it, each of these goals, and that gives the score, and this one is rather positive, it's not negative. And with this, we can have some sort of impact metric on our client and product portfolio in a service company, and that I think is rather new or different to what I have seen, because I'm active in this domain for quite a while now, and especially in a bank like the Alternative Bank of Switzerland, which is one of the entity that has most of the experience in these kinds of things. But I'd say this goes even a bit further, because we have to deal with so many sectors and so many different companies that would, I'd say, not even be the case at the Alternative Bank. It's not what the Alternative Bank does, this thing here. That's our way of doing so. So that's about it. I didn't want to show you too much of our, screenshots of software. It couldn't be more boring, so I'm just going to stop here. But why actually bother? So why did we do this? We did this actually with external experts, so people that are really experts on the domain, because we aren't that, not yet, at least. So we have looked at our portfolio. We tried to get like second opinions on some ratings, and we started to wrap up this to mount this new initiative. But why actually even bother? Why should we bother? So for us as a company, it's some sort of a next step, because as I've explained, when we started the company, things like these were, part of why and how we built the company. So it wasn't a thing we had to decide like 3 years ago. It's interesting to become sustainable. No, we didn't have to do that, because it was somehow part of our foundation story, like we put up this company. But we went further and further and further. For now, for us, this thing what we were trying to achieve here, which is pretty new for us, we're going to figure out how it's going to work for us, how it's going to feel, how it's going to evolve our portfolio. But first, it's some sort of a logic consequence, a logic next step towards a purposeful organization, or the self-organization community likes to call it. It's evolutionary purpose. So how it develops your purpose, that's not something static, even though the sentence might be the same for quite some time. And I think for us as companies, as we are global corporate citizens, it's a responsibility. I think myself, it's more important to do something good to make the world, even though it's cheesy, to make the world a better place before doing profit. But I know this is still a thing that sounds not that mainstream yet. But we have an issue with our current system, and I think we as companies can really show how we could do. And actually, the slides you've seen before from Melissa shows also that that companies, they even get the trust from people to do something. And I think as a global corporate citizen, it's our responsibility. And it's the future anyway, so thank you so much.
You go through quite a lot of pain with your ethics committee, and for me also then the question is, a lot of pain, is it worth it? Does it work?
As good as it gets. I was quite, I hope, honest. We are a service company. We are part of a supply chain, often from bigger companies. Our client portfolio are rather big Swiss companies or international companies. So I'm not naive. We are part of this. But still, we have something at play here. We can do something with that. And if I look back, the whole agile or self-organization movement, I mean, that had an influence on our clients. They wanted to become what we were, and we were somehow there to help them get there. And maybe we can play that even in sustainability, because when you look at sustainable development, articles and stuff, digital is always huge because it's going to play a big part in how to make the energy transition possible. Because if you have way more decentralized systems, you're going to have to deal with a lot of data. You're going to have to somehow build this new world, and it won't be like we had it in the past. And I think there's something at play. I can also say, yeah, of course, it's a business opportunity, of course, but I'd say it's, for me personally, that's not the main driver. The first driver is, how can I contribute to a better world? I mean, it's cheesy, yes, again, but I mean, that's what I try to do, also as politician, actually.
Yeah, but I think, especially as digital agencies, you come to a company usually when it's something changes or processes are changing or there's changing a lot, and then you can really have an impact also when you advise them or they ask you for advice and change the processes. You can always try to bring in better aspects that make this company more sustainable. Or
Yeah, you recently started to try to be a B Corp.
yes, I mean, for us, it's the center of our gravity was not like at Liip to be sustainable or to have the best impact. It was rather to create experiences that make the web a better place, but it's, I mean, always for the client something. And at Depth, this was also an urge or a desire to implement something that makes sure that we are on a good path also towards those topics to make a better impact for the world. So that's why we got B Corp certified. This is just a starting point. You have to. It's a huge effort actually to measure all your impacts. You have to be like, there's 3 pillars. It's diversity, inclusion, and equality. Then there's the impact of your work, and then there's the environmental impact that you have as a company. So you start to measure those things. You make an impact report. You start to see how much you score also against other companies. And then you are obliged to get better. So, for example, the impact of the percentage of our impactful work is now, I think, 7% last year, and we want to double it until next year. So it's. I mean, we're not there where we want to be, but it's something that you can implement on all levels of the company, and I think it's a good thing because you start to getting better.
And it's not possible to be a B Corp and still just look at the bottom line.
Sorry? Yeah.
Is that possible or not really?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to match a lot of criteria to be B Corp certified. I don't know how you can cheat, but we didn't cheat. I mean, it's I don't know, but I think it's a really serious certification, and I mean, it's just a tool as well as purpose is a tool, and you implement it the right way, then it changes a lot, and yeah, that's how we try to do it.
Yeah, Melissa, you are involved with quite a lot of companies who try to do that. So maybe how many you think are in the state of like trying to purpose wash or go in that, and how many are really convinced?
Is it working? Because I was doing some. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Because with the hair, I think it's more for men than women. So yeah, I think purpose washing, it's a thing. Of course, it's been there and it's still there. But I think like also we need to bear in mind that this talent that we keep talking about, like if there are something there, talent, you know, they are becoming now the leaders of these companies, you know, and they are part of the management, and they will be if they are not today. So there is many times, like you described, they genuinely want to change because they want to change themselves. And I think leadership has a super critical role in the company transformation. So if the leader is really genuinely wanting to have a positive impact, the company will probably go in the same direction. If the management is aligned with it, and the other way around is also true. Like if the company wants to go for purpose-driven marketing, let's say, but the CEO of the organization doesn't believe in it, it's going to probably end up in the wrong place. So purpose-wise or not, I would say look at the leader of the organization, and then you will know if the leader is like Unilever, backing up the decision, showing with numbers, supporting decisions that go against the P&L, like he described, because they're good for purpose, and this is only something that the leader can do, then it's probably a true purpose, no? And I think more and more leaders are there, so companies are getting there too.
Okay. My impression was the problem is maybe this narrative of shareholder value. That's the only reason why you should have a company. That's a narrative which is put all over the place, and I think it needs to be questioned. Or it's why that's why we're here.
That's a question. Yes, I question it, of course. Yes. But if you look at what now happens, I mean, pressure, especially on big companies, is getting bigger. You have to be more transparent. You have to be serious. It won't make it just to do some fancy prospectus, because you're going to be audited. You're going to have to commit to things, and that's what one can see now. And I think I hope we're trying to update the capitalism, because what's it all about? It's about a fair capitalism, because if you can produce stuff and you don't have to pay for what you destroy along the way, I mean, that I don't know what that is. That's not a free market. That's some sort of subsidizing system for companies that are somehow here for decades and don't care. And I mean, these things, we're going to have to internalize external costs. And I think we are right now trying to do, as a world community, to get there. I mean, the UN goals try to contribute. And yes, of course, we're going to fall back. Some will try to somehow try not to comply or try to find other ways to tweak the system. Yes, but this train somehow started, and I'm a way too optimistic person. I mean, the planet is going right into the wall, but I'm still somehow optimistic, because you don't have a choice, actually.
Yes. Yeah, we don't. So, quick show of hands, who thinks that shareholder value is still the most important thing here?
But I want to challenge the question, though, because shareholders are also changing, and shareholder value is being measured in different ways now. And I think this is where it's getting interesting, that purpose and impact is being part of the P&L and is being part of the shareholder value calculation. And this is where we're going to get to the right moment, and it's happening now, where actually the way we understand profit or we understand shareholder value changes. And this is already starting to happen. There are already organizations that put their social impact into their P&Ls, and big companies. Chanel actually is one of the companies that is starting to implement that. So I think the shareholder value is going to keep being the most important thing, but the way it's calculated, it's going to change.
Okay.
Yeah. We did have an example from General Electric, I think, in your presentation, right? And Jack Welch of General Electric called shareholder value the dumbest idea in the world, like years ago already. And I think you're engaged with a bank. And I think that's a good example where these things go awry, actually, because actually banks do have a purpose in our societies, and and it got lost in them over shareholder value. Same with insurances. People go to banks or insurances to make a steep career and earn a lot of money, but that's not actually what they are there for. And now I'm really curious where this will lead when companies like oil drilling companies will start looking for their purpose in our societies, right? So I think all companies do have a purpose. all the products, as we saw with mayonnaise, can serve a purpose and do have an inner purpose to them. But once companies start looking after this purpose, it begins to become really interesting for us as participants in the markets to figure out, are these really companies we want to work with, like Liip really does right now? So that's really cool about it.
I do take a little bit of an issue with your statement. You're saying that companies really are taking, or CEOs are taking the lead in defining purpose, or that society is now following companies because CEOs are defining what the purpose is and becomes a purpose of society because society does not trust government anymore, it doesn't believe in government anymore. I think we can talk at length about it, but it is, to one degree, I think it is very troubling that this is what's happening in our society because it's wrong. It's a contrat social that should be, I think we can go 1,500 or 2,000 kilometers to the east so we know what is happening when other people define the purpose for you, whether that be a CEO of a company or a president of another country that has just decided you have a different purpose now. So I know it's important that CEOs, leaders have to make a statement, but especially in the States, we have to see how it develops here. I find it a super problematic development. Where also, because it led there, in my view, to this path of, okay, here as a CEO, now I exit the company, I have my own foundation, and with my foundation, or charity, I support XYZ, they create a new purpose, and they then, with that, define, again, what should be the purpose. I mean, so I think we have to be careful when we look at the, or when we have an imbalance in this equation.
Mm-hmm. So first of all, I didn't say it's not troubling. I think I agree. The fact that we don't trust governments and we trust more the CEOs than the governments, I'm not 100% sure that's positive. This is just showing what's happening with the numbers. But to come back to your question, first, I think you said something very interesting, which is the difference between the US and Switzerland. And you mentioned in the US it's one thing, in Switzerland it's another. And this is a very important topic because purpose and the role of businesses in the society is extremely different, right, in the US than it's here, that it's in Europe, that it's in Israel where I lived. And also what's the view on what's a CEO and a leader, it's also totally different, no? So it's important to bear that and the cultural environment in mind when we think of purpose and of leadership. Now, there is one thing I disagree, because there's been in the history always great leaders with great power that came from the private sector that made great impact, and I just can think of Tesla. I mean, if I think of Elon Musk, what he has achieved, and I think we cannot agree in this room, like or dislike Elon Musk, is a different conversation. What he has achieved for society and how he connected profit, for sure, and purpose, and what he brought into the society, it's crazy. I mean, and this has been always the history of the private sector. This is not new. I think we kind of a bit lost the way, and I think this is where we got there. But there were always great leaders and great innovators in the private sector that made the society advance and move forward. This is not new. This has always been there. So I think we are actually going back to where we should be, which is like, okay, these leaders that have this power, because at the end of the day, when you are the leader of the biggest brand company in the world, of the biggest transportation company in the world, you have a huge impact in society. You have a huge impact, and with this impact comes a huge responsibility. And this responsibility is to make sure that these people that you enter in contact with and your business is responsible. And we cannot give this responsibility only to the government, because we are looking only at this part of the society. And if leaders can help society move forward. This is, I mean, for me, it's definitely something positive. I don't see anything negative on it. And the last thing is you said they define our purpose. They don't define your purpose. This is not at any point what I said. Like the CEOs, they define what's the purpose of their organization and how to connect their profit with the society at large. And you can choose to buy from them or not. That's a different conversation. And as the consumers, we have that power. The great thing is that consumers, we put a lot of pressure into these leaders to take this right decision, and we can only look at what's happening with Ukraine and how the private sector and the leaders got involved in a crisis, no? And I think this was a very clear example of how the public expected companies to take a stand. And this is a very recent example.
I'd like to challenge that. Sorry for crashing
please.
the part. I mean, Tesla is a great example. Just to give an opposite view on that. I mean, what did Elon Musk really achieve? He replaced fossil fuels with batteries. It's a good thing. He didn't solve any issue with transportation at all, individual transportation. I'd say even the opposite. That's just one thing. The other thing, because why isn't the greatest leader the one making people use bicycles? I mean, that's sustainable, but not Tesla. Sorry. That's the first thing. I'm going to be a bit harsh.
Agree to disagree.
I'm going to be a bit harsh. And the other thing, and I really join you there, because it's delicate. When one person has so much power, I mean, that's within systemically not a sustainable solution. I mean, if you look at the value of Apple, Apple is now worth, maybe not today, but it was last year, it was this peak, $3,000 billion. I mean, France has a GDP of around $2,700. So whole France can work for a year, and they don't get to the value of Apple, which is ruled by a bunch of probably old white men. And I think, okay, they're a bit simplistic, okay, sure, taken. But what I have as issue with that, they have this huge power to make us believe that this is the future we need and want. And we continue to destroy the planet with these kinds of really, really powerful companies. Because at the end of the day, great if Apple does a new, better version of its product. But from a resource perspective, it's better just to not renew your iPhone and try to use it for 10, 15, 20 years. That would be a great move. But it isn't. Because why? It's not that profitable. And I have a huge issue, with, especially with huge, large companies that dominate markets. I mean, you could look at other examples, like, I mean, Amazon, who could easily push out competitors because they basically privatized markets. I mean, markets, usually that's a place where people go and sell their stuff. Amazon privatized market space as it is. And I mean, I think that's part of I'm now becoming the pessimistic person I also can be. I think big corps are especially harmful, and I personally don't want to give them the power to define the future of our world. I'm a huge Democrat in this, and we can go slower. We can
Do you
go,
trust more governments than...
in Switzerland, yes, because I know how I'm trying to be pushed in a way from corporations. I'm in the Swiss parliament, so I know how this works. And if you have a good wallet, you're going to be able to push things in Bern. It's like it is. I know how it works. So,
I would like, if you don't mind, I would like to challenge it in another way, if you don't mind, is that all of you, I'm not in advertising, but I do a lot of marketing work. I do scale-up work. I work with startup companies, and I find it super interesting what you guys, I mean, always interesting to hear what goes on in outside of what I do, because in the end, we're all in self-promotion and in marketing, because if we're honest, we have to eat.
Sure.
So we have to find a way to eat. But I find it I find this discussion on purpose, I find it super fascinating, but I also find it super difficult and challenging when you as a advertising executive, you question Apple, because I could take it in the other way around. It's like, hey, you know, what can you learn from Steve Jobs and Apple? Is like you take a nothing and you make a great marketing campaign and you make everybody feel bad about not owning an iPhone. Same with Patagonia, same with Tesla. I mean, the price points of these products, if you're honest, they're super high. So the majority of the people who would even like the purpose of that company or what this company is doing as a in communities and purported strategy cannot afford it. So they are dividing again between the haves and the have-nots. So
to get back to some more calm waters. I'm not the big anti-capitalist. I'm trying to. I try to just be here. The thing, I mean, my message would be: we have to be careful if companies get too big. I think that's an issue. And right now we have an issue with a bunch of companies that are way too big, that have in the US even political rights like people have. I mean, that's really it's getting scary. And when economy influences politics too much, and I feel this pressure, then we are not that free as a society because something else rules, but not the interest of people. And I'd say it helps when companies do not get too big, and nobody can tell me Apple is about the right size.
But you're like, I mean, I'm getting very interesting. Because I'm not, I live here, but I'm not Swiss, as you know. So it's very interesting. I think there is a cultural discussion and like deep difference on the way you understand the government. I lived, while living here, I experimented. It was very interesting, and it's very different. But it's also interesting to see, to listen to, because at the end, politicians have an agenda, and to believe that politicians want your best more than the other guy, I think is naive. I mean, honestly. I mean, so what we are saying is like trust, and this is data, in governments is a disaster. And there is a reason for that. Mm-hmm. They failed so many times. And they fail and over again. So I'm not talking about Switzerland, okay?
It's different.
I'm careful because I know. So, but when you look at the world and European countries and the US, and so it's not like we talk about capitalism and leaders like they are evil, and then no, but you know, let's protect our democracy. And sorry, I know you are in politics, but I'm challenging a bit. And politicians don't have an agenda. Politicians' agenda is not money, but it's something else. So at the end of the day, the solution is how to connect profit and purpose. Because if they can make money while making good, they will try to maximize their profit, and it will be beneficial for me. And that's what we are trying to do here. So we disagree with Tesla, but Tesla or Patagonia or whatever is a great example, because Patagonia also achieved a lot socially. They make a lot of money, so what? What's the problem with that? At least I know what's their agenda. To make money. Okay, and that's not, and this is the way they can help. If we believe a company is going to help without making money, this is not conscious capitalism, which is what we're trying to create, so that they can make a lot of money and help a lot with that money. And this is what we want. So we don't want them to not make money. We want them to make a lot of money, so they can help a lot with that money. And this is what's changing. And it's the whole concept of this conscious capitalism that it's starting to erase. And I'm a big defendant of that. So too much power or not too much power, I think is a different conversation about, and in the digital era is even a bigger topic, right? How much power companies have and monopolies, etc. And I think it's separate from the others' discussion. I think we're mixing two different topics. That's my opinion.
We're asking a great question right now, I notice. Do we prefer autocratic capitalism or democracy? Mm-hmm. So my answer is clear, so no question here.
But it's going to be a question who defines what is meaningful in our society.
Oh, sorry.
It's kind of changing, a shift happening there. You want to say something?
I wonder whether I don't think that we mix up the topics, because I think that's the very important question when it comes to the real, well, not to the end, but you said the maximizing the profit, and I would say it is purpose, and maximizing the profit is is not I would say, not the right way. Because profit should be something which is, it's a side effect of following purpose. It's a sort of side effect if we are really engaged in following that purpose. If profit is the purpose, then we don't need any other. We don't need any other purpose. It would be really, honest to say, our purpose, like Aldi, for example, their purpose is just having a profit for themselves and for the clients. That's the two people who should have the profit: the clients and Aldi themselves, the company, and not all the others. So that's very clear. If you go there, you know you're the one who will make the profit and the seller, and not the other ones. So that's honest, I would say. I have a real problem with companies who say, that is my purpose and that's why I like it. Look at the leaders, if they're really following it. But purpose could be the solution to say that the strong leaders are substituted by purpose. So I think the company is the more stronger, the more the purpose is in the center and not the leader. Because if the leader is leaving, it just breaks down. But if the purpose is strong enough to stay there, it will attract all the other people, and it would be a possibility to measure whether the leader is somehow finding himself much more smarter and more sexy than the purpose itself. So I think sometimes that could be even a good possibility to measure how close the company really is to the purpose. So,
yeah, I might add something there. I mean, Liip got rid of us as co-CEOs, partners, but we don't have a management crew anymore because we are completely decentralized. And personally, for me, one big driver was exactly this. I mean, if it's a person who holds all the ideas, the charisma, all that things, I mean, we know how that worked and still works. Personally, I'm not so fond of, and I don't think that's what we're going to need in the future. We're going to need way more collective intelligence, like on an eye-to-eye level, collaborating, because at the end of the day, we're all part of this society, and it cannot be, as it can't be a dictator telling me how I have to do my day. It cannot be a company, basically, and I have actually this conversation with my son. I mean, my son, soon 15 years old, he's a very independent person, and he says he goes his way. I mean, that's great, things he wants to decide himself. And now stop, parents, I'm going to take that decision. Awesome. But what does he do with his smartphone? And I thought you were independent, but you know that Google or Facebook basically drives you through the day. I mean, what's that? I mean, is that what we really want? And of course, the great leaders that invented great products, but at the end of the day, are we somehow free? Another big word. And I think we won't become free if we choose yet another charismatic leader. That won't be the future I want to work for. That's also a thing that was basically part of our decision. How does our company thrive? Especially without having these. That doesn't say that we don't have interesting people. I mean, Hannes is one of them, and others, Timo was one of us, great people, but there doesn't have to be one. Elon Musk, sorry.
Okay.
How do you, this is interesting because it's contradicting also one of the things that is being asked from consumers and talent, which is the humanity, no? The brands before they were hiding against a logo and whatever, and now no one really cares. I mean, I'm simplifying. And they want to know who is behind, who is that person, and get to know that person and get in love with the person. Like in the case even of entrepreneurs, it's even stronger. Like they just need to stand up and explain their story and no one cares what's their brand. And so I agree and kind of disagree a bit because if you don't put a person or a 2-person or 3-person, I don't mind. But if you don't bring humanity into your brand and into your purpose, at the end of the day, a purpose is about humanity. It's about helping others. It's about connecting. It's not a sentence on a slide.
I totally agree.
Yeah, but it's human. You need to connect. I mean, like what we are doing here, and I think we all went through it in COVID. I mean, we tried to connect it through a screen, and it was not enough. And it's if I'm gonna give my company my money and now my trust into even having power politically, even if you don't agree in some cases, and I want to see the person, and I want to know who this person is, and talk to the person at an eye level. So I think there is a challenge between what you're saying and what society is asking, which is even more humanity in business.
I wouldn't object on that. Sorry, I'm so sorry. You have a hard time moderating this.
Yes. I think we're not going to close it tonight, I think.
Huh?
Should we do that at the apero, the rest?
Sure thing. Because you know, if I get started, I won't stop.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder actually where does the purpose root, right?
That's a very good question.
Because I wonder, is it not a spiritual thing which we're looking for? So we are so lost as a species, and we are looking so desperate for having something in our lives, and we should think about how we can enable young people to think about their inner life and that they recognize they are the purpose themselves, right? We bring the sense into our lives, in our connecting society, and I really wonder, is it really important why we are looking for purpose? Like, I connect with you on this one. I don't care, right? I was so alone, like for 20 years when I stopped eating meat, and everybody was laughing about me because I thought I cannot kill another being. But I discovered a lot of other aspects where I just feel like a hypocrite, right? And
it's life.
Yeah, it's life, right? So you do something good, and you see it will never end, but the journey starts, right? For me, the journey started there, and when I see the young generations grow and looking for a purpose, I think we have a responsibility in our luxury to think about purpose, because there are so many people who are looking for food, right? And we should really, Maslow's pyramid, we should look for solving the existential problems on this planet, that everybody has food and everybody has like a feeling of I'm right and I'm something worth. And we care about dual education in Switzerland. I'm working for Justi, and it's so hard to even compare somebody who makes a vocational training that he has the same worth that somebody goes to university, something so basic, right? They earn a lot less, so they're looking for their money every month, and as you said, I can afford a Tesla, by the way. A lot of people can't, right? So how can we solve this gap, right? And I come back to my initial question, where do you guys root your purpose?
Go ahead, because you want to talk and you before we fight again.
I monopolized it too much. Whoa. I don't know if I have a good answer for you. I mean, I can't even tell where this come from, what drives me personally. I think it's something deep, how I grew up on a farm. I made the duale Bildungssystem. I'm a trained carpenter. So there are things happening in your life, and everything adds up to something that constitutes this thing you feel, hopefully, or we feel each and every one of us that makes you somehow, that gives you this drive you have. But I can't really answer this question, but maybe I didn't got it right. That might also be the case because I'm a bad English-speaking person.
Well, as a designer, I would say humans are meaning-making machines. Meaning is a human invention, and we're seeking that. And I think it's up to everybody to find it. And I think we're here because it was the system we have until now is actually badly done. People do a lot of things that they don't actually do why they do it. And then we get in such a big mess that we don't even think why we're doing stuff while we're destroying the planet.
Yeah, I will answer short because I know we're late. So I think there is a difference also that it's important to highlight, which is personal purpose versus company purpose. I think we're mixing a bit both constantly, which is fine, but I think we each individually look for our own purpose, and society is also going through this process of why do I exist and what's my own purpose, which is one thing, and then the company. So I think it's happening at the same time, but I think where they are rooted, to your question, I think the answer would be different. But I do agree with one thing you said, is that I think thanks to technology and advancement, society went faster than we could handle, like humanity, and still is. And I think we got lost on the way, all of us, including companies. And I think it's rooted in just going back to asking the right questions. That's it. So that would be my answer. We just got lost, and I think now we are back to basis, or at least ask the right questions again. Yeah.
Okay, let's close it here.
That's perfect.
Thanks.